forced to shelter in place. An alarming new trend has emerged in this crisis. Police departments all over the country seeing a surge in domestic violence calls. In fact, several of the nation's largest cities like New York, Houston, Chicago, they're seeing a double-digit increase. Now, state and local governments are partnering with nonprofits to create new ways to help protect victims of domestic violence. NBC's Morgan Radford has been following this part of the story very closely, and she joins me now from New York. Morgan, how are officials working to keep victims safe during these unprecedented times?
Well, Craig, think secret code words and covert meetings in places like grocery stores. These are just some of the creative ways that cities and states from all across the country are now having to use to reach those victims of domestic violence. This, as they say, the number of calls to domestic violence hotlines and police departments has skyrocketed since the pandemic began. Because the idea is that these shelter-in-place orders were designed to keep people safe from the virus, but now the unintended consequence is that they're forcing victims to now stay inside with their abusers. Take a listen.
You must stay home. Stay at home.
Stay home?
Stay at home.
How do you shelter in place if your shelter isn't safe? Police departments across the country say they've seen a staggering surge in the number of domestic violence calls since the COVID-19 pandemic began in the U.S.
People are, under a great deal of stress right now with the COVID crisis, so we did expect to see an uptick, and we did.
Here in New York, calls to the state's domestic violence hotline are up 32% compared to this time last year, increasing 53% between February and April alone.
There is no shame in reaching out and saying, I need help.
In Houston, the police department saw an almost 20% spike in calls. And Seattle and Chicago also saw double-digit growth under stay-at-home orders.
And you're the person who picks up on the other end.
Yes.
Anita Flowers works for the Illinois Domestic Violence Hotline.
50 people a day are calling you saying they're in trouble.
They are in trouble. They need shelters. They need to leave because the abuser is home, because he's unemployed due to the coronavirus.
And for her, this isn't just a job. She's a survivor of domestic abuse herself.
Some of them would tell me, oh, you don't know what I'm going through. I said, yes, I do. Trust me, I do. I was physically abused. I survived.
Experts say the rise in domestic calls during this pandemic is happening for a variety of reasons. But chief among them, the fact that stay-at-home orders now force victims to spend more time in abusive environments with partners who may now be facing increased financial pressures and added stress.
So a survivor isn't going to work and finding respite. The abuser isn't going to work to give the survivor time away. And so for advocates, it's been really challenging to ensure that we're able to stay in touch with survivors of domestic violence when the abuser is home.
Which is why nationwide, support services are developing new approaches for tackling abuse during the pandemic. In New York, state officials are now offering a new texting service for its domestic violence hotline, and advocacy groups are creating a code word plan where a victim can walk into any pharmacy and provide a signal that they need help. In Los Angeles, the city now providing hotel rooms in addition to shelters to maintain social distancing guidelines.
We have a place for you. You do not have to be home.
And advocacy groups are meeting with victims at places that remain open, like grocery stores, gas stations, or home improvement stores.
We know in the coming months that calls for help are only going to increase and that we need to be ready to respond to those calls at that time.
And provide a safe shelter.
What would you say to other people, other victims who are in this position now, experiencing what you went through?
You are beautiful. You are something. You are somebody, and you have to move on.
Craig, experts say there are a few tips you can follow to make sure that you and the people around you are safe during the pandemic. One, you can create a safety plan inside your home since it's harder now to get to neighbors' homes. So, for example, you find a room inside with a lock and a key and a door to make sure that you can get to safety immediately. Number two, create a code word so that friends and family know that if you say that code word, you need help immediately. And third and finally, save that domestic violence hotline under a different name and put it in your speed dial. That way, if you get help, you can get help immediately if you dial that number. Craig?